here we go. So I have the live chat up for Periscope and Facebook. Let me make sure everything's up and going. Let's see. Make sure we're on Periscope, that's live. Hello guys. How are you? Hello, Nether6. How are you guys doing? So I've got it on YouTube, so let me get Facebook going. All right, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and we're also live on Periscope. How are you guys? Can the people on Periscope say hello? I'm hoping I can pick up the things they say. Let me see. I'm going to turn down the sound on here. There's 7 of you guys on Periscope watching. So if you have questions or anything to say, hop on. And you came to say hi. Awesome. Hello. I'm so glad you're here. CACO3. Good morning. So today we are talking about GMO. Woo. So many people are scared of GMO. Hey Dave, hey Bo, hey Ray Ray. So many people are afraid of GMO, and this was what the topic was that was voted for, and so I compiled this all together with the latest information to give you guys in regards to the thing known as genetically modified organisms. So, so I kind of want to talk a bit about what this is, why we have it, why it's necessary, and all of that. Oh, Nether is even more interested in this topic than usual. You worked with GMOs in the lab, mostly E. coli and yeast, but a few modified mammal cell culture. See, that's cool. So I'm going to be focused on mostly the consumer aspects of that, which is, the thing that's pretty interesting about the work I do. I work in recombinant proteins, so I work essentially with genetically modified organisms already. Hello, Lone Wolf. Hello, Dawn. So I already work with genetically modified organisms through protein purification, primarily with yeast. So, but I work on the downstream aspect of that, is collecting the proteins associated with the organisms that we modify. But I'm going to talk about the consumer-based GMO, because the reason why I want to kind of talk a bit about that is because people are so scared about genetically modified organisms and how that affects health, if there is a health issue, and the reason why we have to have it. There's a lot of paperwork, the strict laws regarding GMOs in Germany, and different countries have different regulations. But organic food is so much more healthy and uses less pesticides. Oh goodness, there's reasons why genetically modified organisms are extremely useful and important. So let's go ahead and get started. So that's my really cool intro that was provided to me by Gonna Go For It, aka Peter. Go check out his channel. He's Mind the Gap, and he does lots of cool debates and stuff, which is awesome. All right, so GMOs. What is this stuff? Why are people making such a ruckus about it? So what I'm going to talk about today is, what is it? Why do we do it? How does it work? And are there potential issues? Your parrot was singing along. That's awesome. So these are the topics I'm going to cover. And also, if you're new to this type of format, what I do is I post polls every week. I've gone back to doing polls again. I was trying to go back and do all of my older episodes in this newer format. And so I've hit some of the main episodes I wanted to cover. But now I'm going back to polls, and this was the topic that was voted for. I post polls on Google+, sometimes on Facebook, as well as Twitter. And I just compile all the votes, and this was the topic that won. Hello, Lavender Lady. And so we're going to talk about genetically modified organisms today in regards to consumer use. There are other forms of genetically modified organisms. I'll touch on that here in just a second and kind of give you a little bit of a side thing about that, a little side discussion about that. So, GMO, what is it? So if you go on the World Health Organization, they have a wonderful website where you can kind of sit through, and they have a really brief sum up of what GMO is as far as what it's considered, and if there are any health concerns and that sort of thing. And the cool thing about the World Health Organization is that it works with other countries to help kind of keep genetically modified organisms safe and intact. Have I ever covered geological topics? I have talked about climate change, and we've talked about things like that. And I'm currently on SciStrike's channel. I think tomorrow is the last day for our climate change series, right before Earth Day. So we're going to end on Earth Day pretty much with our climate change series, and they talk a lot about geological stuff. But if you have a topic that you want me to cover, shoot me an email, use my hashtag HeyScientistMel on Twitter, find me on Google+, shoot me a topic idea there, and I'll incorporate it into my polls. If you're one of my patrons, your topics go automatically, your topics of choice go automatically into my polls. So that's always kind of cool. So, hello everyone. Hi Owen. What channel? Where? I am on YouTube. You can always send me your topic suggestions on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/ScientistMel. I'm ScientistMel everywhere. And if you're not on any kind of social media, go to my website, scientistmel.com, and then you can send me an email there with a topic idea. Human gene modification, I'm not covering that in this particular talk, but I will, I can add that to my list of topics that people would like to cover. Topics, pretty much all of the topics that I've discussed, perhaps instead of maybe save 3 or 4 shows, have all been viewer-generated topics. All of them, except for, I believe, 3 or 4. And that's been over the course of a year. So there are some topics that I felt were kind of necessary and some that were fun. So I'm pretty much going to talk about consumer based type of GMOs. So what is a GMO? Well, people like GMO, GMO, and I'm like, you say these letters, but do you know what it means? It's genetically modified organisms. Sometimes they're called GEs, genetically engineered food. Now, it can be defined in regards to plants, animals, microbes, this sort of thing. But essentially what we're doing is we're taking the genetic material and we're altering it. And it's in a way that's not considered naturally based. And so we can do this by mating or through what we call recombination. Recombination is a technology where we actually take genes and put them into an organism's genome. So this technology, we can call it modern biotechnology, gene technology, recombinant DNA technology, genetic engineering, all of these terms are used in association with GMOs. Now, this particular technology allows us to be able to take selected genes that produce a particular protein or a trait that we want, that's desired in a particular organism. Now, we've been doing things like this with bacteria for a long time. We can genetically engineer bacteria to make a particular protein through the use of what we call recombinant and plasmids. Recombinant DNA introduced into their genetic code because, unlike humans and multicellular organisms, bacteria have their DNA just floating around, so they're really easy to manipulate. As opposed to trying to manipulate an entire multicellular organism, it's way easier to kind of manipulate a single-celled organism. So we see a lot of DNA recombination in yeast and in bacteria because they're easily manipulated. Insulin, yes, insulin is a perfect example of how we've been able to modify bacteria. We put that insulin gene into the bacteria, and guess what? Because the genetic code is universal, any ribosome that's in a particular microorganism is going to read that genetic code and make whatever the protein is. Because let's face it, genetic code is the recipe for proteins. Insulin is a protein, and if you have the recipe and you stick it into an organism that reads the recipe, it's going to make it, because every living thing has ribosomes. Those are the bakers of the proteins that we see, and they read the recipe. So when we're looking at this, foods produced from these genetically modified organisms sometimes are called GM foods or GE foods, genetically modified foods or genetically engineered foods. They're kind of used similarly. You produce your own insulin. That's usually desired. Usually people want to desire. Now, when people are talking about genetically modified organisms, sometimes they throw out what we call artificial selection. We have been modifying organisms, not on the genetic level directly, where we're taking genes out, silencing them, putting new genes in. We haven't actually been doing that, but we have been modifying organisms since we've been in agriculture for thousands and thousands of years. So what is artificial selection? Farmers, breeders, and related species are involved in this. So artificial selection, we pick organisms for particular traits, we have them mate, and we generate offspring that we want. Corn used to be like teeny tiny little bitty bit size, but now we have these huge corn cobs. Yes, bananas are another example. Now it's important to note that currently, at least in the U.S., there isn't any kind of genetic modification in regards to farm animals, but it is for plants, and these particular farm animals can eat genetically modified plants. Now, because of artificial selection, we have larger crops, larger cows, more milk-producing cows. Farmers have been altering genes through crossbreeding in plants and selecting for desired traits for thousands of years. GMO is a way that we take that process a bit further, but expedite it. Being useful to humans has been perhaps the best evolutionary strategy for the last 10,000 years on Earth. Yes. Have I heard of Norman Borlaug? Norman Borlaug, I believe I have. Wasn't he one of the first ones about 30 years ago that was involved in genetic engineering? I believe there was an episode of BS with Penn and Teller where they were talking about genetically modified food. People are afraid of it. And, you know, because I have to say, and I'll talk a little bit about why people have to essentially get over this fear of GMO, because it's going to become necessary at this point, and largely due to climate change. All right, so we've talked about what genetically modified organisms are, and we've talked about how we've kind of been modifying organisms anyway for about 10,000 years. So He did selection of wheat before recombinant DNA. Ah, okay. Well, thank you, Grasp on Reality. So, if you want to learn more about Borlaug, Jinx, Nether, RSC 227. All right, so if you want to learn more about Borlaug, perhaps at the end of the talk here, we can look him up and talk a bit more about him if that's somebody you want to further flesh out and talk about. So why in the world would we want to genetically modify organisms? Well, there are several good reasons, and a lot of it has to do with climate change and sustainability. Yes, and not just climate change, but the amount of people that we have to feed. That's right, totally, Walter, over on Periscope. We are reaching larger amounts of people on this planet, and since we have more people on this planet, we have more mouths to feed, and GMO kind of helps with that. Before recombinant DNA, we used to use all kinds of mutagenic methods to change genes. Yeah, and that's probably a bit scarier, the mutagenic methods. This chat is above my education intelligence level. It's great. Goodness. Glow-in-the-dark corn. One of the things when I was a teacher in biology, one of the things that I used to do is I would sit there like, who wants to look at glow-in-the-dark kittens? The GFP gene, the jellyfish gene. It's amazing. Norman Borlaug, more than 40 years ago, he started the GMO trend by cultivating drought-resistant crops, won the Nobel Prize, and started the Green Revolution, saved 1 billion people from starving to death. See, GMO is not the devil. It's okay. It's okay. So why do we do it? Sustainability is one of the reasons why we do GMO. My picture is too far over on there, but that's okay. We try to fix it as we go. All right. So let's look at these particular things. Why do we get involved with this? All right, so here's some reasons. We have sustainability, enhanced biodiversity, improves soil, reduces CO2, conserves water, and mitigates nutrient pollution. GNO equals generating malicious objects. Oh my goodness. GMO, crops that can resist high winds better. Yes. You're fascinated by the glow-in-the-dark fish. Yes, they use jellyfish genes. That's called the GFP gene. The GFP gene, as an aside, here, we'll talk about this a second because I know a bit about this. As an aside, the GFP gene, because the genetic code is universal, we're able to inject these different genes into embryos, and we can generate these types of organisms. This is also important because you can tag particular genes with this GFP gene or particular proteins associated that you're trying to track, and it makes it easier to see in research. We can study diseases this way, especially in different types of animals. We've made glow-in-the-dark sheep, pigs, monkeys, kittens, monkeys and kittens, so we can study the HIV trends in them and how HIV actually is attracted to their immune system. So we're able to track that through the use of GFP. It's fantastic. I often kidded with my former students in biology class. I'm like, we should all go to laser tag, but I'm going to inject some GFP into some of your skin cells so I can track you in the fluorescent light. And I'm going to just ping, ping, ping. Because laser tag, at least out here, they use black lights. And so it's be really, really cool to be able to have like GFP tattoos, you know, put them on people and see them, you know, so you can shoot them with your lasers and laser tag. There are reasons we should, why isn't this a thing? So there you go. So let's talk a bit about the uses of GMO. His big thing was taking a dwarf wheat found in Japan and crossing it with a high yield tall wheats to get short high yield wheat. So that's pretty cool about Borlaug. This would be useful for those cold places, Nether. You know, and I believe there was a genetically modified strawberry where they had taken a gene from one of the Arctic fish and modified strawberries. They came out blue, but it meant that you could put them in the freezer and they would retain their shape. and they wouldn't be so funky and weird. Because, you know, who wants a smoothie with a messed up, weird strawberry? You know what I mean? You could thaw out these strawberries and they were just like they were fresh, but they were blue. That was a side effect to that particular fish gene. It made it blue. But there you go. I don't think those particular strawberries are on the market, but that was a study and research that was done. So let's talk a bit about these individual things and how GMO helps sustainability, enhance biodiversity, reduces CO2, improves soil, mitigates nutrient pollution, conserves water. Why do we care about this? Why is this important? So something we're going to talk about, I'm going to go through this. All right. Why does everyone say not to buy products with GMO? Because they're scared and they don't understand it. If there's anything we've learned with education is that people are afraid of things they don't understand, you know? So that would make them blueberries. That's right, totally, Walter. Oh, goodness. All right, so in regards to sustainability and the environment, why are GMOs useful? Larger crops with less land. So you have larger crops, you have a less amount of land that you got to use, so that means less mowing down forests for farming. Insect-resistant crops provide pest control that is targeted towards the problematic bugs, but not the important ones like pollinators, like bees, butterflies, all of these different insects that we need in order to pollinate. Now this also, if we add the benefit of herbicide-tolerant plants, this means fewer pesticide applications, so we don't have to use so many different types of pesticides. With global warming being an issue, generating drought-tolerant plants is crucial. So there's something called conservation tilling. Used to, farmers would just bust up the soil and then try to remix it up a bit better so they could replant. Well, the problem with that is that requires a lot of water and it also releases CO2 in the atmosphere. Conservation tilling, instead of soil tilling, allows plant remnants to be left on top of the soil and seeds placed within the plant or soil residue. So this is essentially as mulch. Now, advances in GMO conservation tilling, this reduces the CO2 emissions. So since we've been able to use GMO, we're able to use conservation tilling, reducing the CO2 emissions. And furthermore, all of these practices conserve water. Less tilling in drought-tolerant plants means less water is used, and there are plants being developed. Okay. Sorry, what do you think about labeling GMOs on products? Okay. Really quickly, GMOs, I mean, if people want to know what that is, now, there may be reasons for that, and I'll talk about why labeling will be important, but I would think allergens, only for allergen purposes, this particular organism was genetically modified. It produces a certain amount of this protein. If you have allergies to this, you know, allergens would be useful. Now back to it. In regards to mitigating nitrogen pollution, there are plants being developed that uptake nitrogen more readily as many plants slowly absorb this crucial nutrient. This will allow farmers to purchase less nitrogen and therefore less nitrogen runoff and pollution into surrounding water supplies. Now, we mentioned this before. Best thing that can save water is people stopping eating meat and animal products in general. Well, possibly, but the thing is, I don't know if that's really a thing. Adding hormones is not genetically modified organisms. You're just adding hormones. Now, in the U.S., there are no genetically modified farm animals for consumption, but those animals can eat plants that are genetically modified. Okay, I think consumers have the right to know, but we have to come to a common usage of GMO for that purpose. Yes, consumers should have a right to know. Well, allergens happen with natural foods too. Yes, they do, but it is important, especially if there's a food that doesn't necessarily have an allergen in it by itself. If you genetically modify it and it generates more of a particular protein, that should be documented instead on the label in case somebody's allergic to it. Right now, there is no objective definition for GMO labeling except California laws. FDA does have a section, and I do have, okay, so if you're curious, at the end of my talk, I always have all of my sources listed. Now, you cannot possibly read all of them, but I do post all of my slides on scientistmail.com, so you'll be able to download this entire presentation along with the links to all of my slides, including all the studies that I've posted and used to develop this chat. So let's talk about humans. Human population is increasing. GMOs provide larger crops and foods for less money. Now, with climate change and global warming on an increasing trend, food will likely become more expensive. GMO is going to be necessary in order to combat the rapid change in climate to help aid plants in surviving and adapting to these quick changes. Because normal natural selection takes a long period of time. But over the past 50 years, we've had such a huge increase amount of CO2. Our temperature has increased, and now we have floods and we have droughts. We're going to need genetically modified plants in order for them to sustain us. I'm trying to catch up on, I'll catch up on questions here in just a bit, because I know people probably have questions. A lot of questions, which is good. We should have questions. Okay, so this particular image comes to us from harvard.edu. So I'm going to pick apart each little step on how GMO works in regards to consumer plants. Woohoo! Gary Moore's order. I knew it was bad. Germany has pretty strict laws on what is a GMO. Sadly, those laws don't apply to food labeling because of some stupid bureaucracy. Oh my goodness. You know, isn't that the way? Too much paperwork and bureaucracy. People don't want to do things. Okay, so let's start with how it works. Again, I said this comes from harvard.edu. If you want the link to all of this, you can go to my website and download the slides. Everything is there. Or have a look. And if you don't have Microsoft Office, try OpenOffice. This will all download into OpenOffice as well. It's a free service, and it's free software for presentations and looking at them and all kinds of stuff. All right, so how do we do this sort of GMO crazy thing? Well, critical thinking and a little bit of luck is how researchers find a desirable trait in a plant or organism. One example is an herbicide-tolerant bacteria that could survive in the presence of Roundup. So by applying this gene to this trait to specific plants, it allows the certain plants to survive in the presence of that particular herbicide. Mel isn't a major contributor to increase in global temperature related to fluorocarbon emission. I believe it's CO2 emission primarily from factories in China. That's the #1 source. #2 is the U.S. Open office plug, yes. Fluorocarbon emission. Oh, fluorochlorocarbon emission. I'll have to look up on the particular particular form of CO2, but it's primarily CO2. General Motors officers. Most GMO foods are fed to animals. Yes, they are fed to animals, but that doesn't make them GMO. All right, so if we're going back to how it works, one example, as I just mentioned, is that herbicide-tolerant bacteria that can survive in the presence of Roundup, which is an herbicide. So if we take that gene from that bacteria and apply it to specific plants, that allows those specific plants to survive in the presence of that herbicide. The herbicide then targets the unwanted plants, but the genetically modified ones survive. Yes, fluorocarbons break down ozone. That's correct. But those are, yes, not impact on CO2. Okay. No, you're right. Fluorocarbons, fluorochlorocarbons, FCCs, those are banned in a lot of aerosols in there. Thank you. Shifting back and forth. All right, so in another example of these particular identifying of traits, there's a particular rice, I believe it's called golden rice, that has a gene that makes something called provitamin A in a large amount. So if they were to take this gene and apply it to a widely used crop in the U.S., corn, it could aid in meeting the needs of communities who have a deficiency of vitamin A. So step 2, genetic analysis is required in order to isolate the portion of an organism's genome in order to determine which gene controls the trait of interest. Yes. So what they have to do is they have to, and if they're looking at the same species, now we can take a bacterial type of gene and put it into a plant because we know that the genetic code is universal. But sometimes if you're talking about the same species of organism, if you look at a plant and you look at another plant that has your gene of choice, you can compare their genomes and see where exactly it falls within the genome of the plant of interest. Please get familiar with the statistics from the World Health Organization. Actually, I quoted their site earlier. I don't remember seeing you in the talk earlier, Gen X Slon. All right, microwavable rice is GMO. Just had the minute rice gene. Oh, goodness. I actually looked at the World Health Order site earlier today when I was generating this particular talk. So, by all means, would we isolate a portion of the DNA using CRISPR? Well, what they usually do is you can map various genomes of, well, not entire genomes, but let me get into the details of that. There is a genetic database already that allows some help in determining what each gene does. Okay? And so if you are going to go through the process of determining what a sequence is, what you could do is called PCR. So if you're looking at sections of DNA, you can copy those sections of DNA by marking through specific gene markers, and then you have this little bacteria that will read that section and make copies of it like a photocopy machine. And then they can take that section, because they know where it starts and ends, whatever that middle section is, that little bacterial enzyme is going to read that and make lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of copies. And then, since it knows where it starts and where it ends, that little middle section, which could be really, 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 really freaking long, you can send that off and have that sequenced. Now, the software that I worked with when I was working on the Tree of Life project was called Genius software. And so then they can go through and they can determine what each particular nucleic acid is and send it to you in a big, huge file, and then you can look at it. And it lets you know what the genetic sequence is for that particular gene. And if you already have a similar gene from another plant, you can download that into your database and have a look and see where the differences are. That's essentially what they're kind of doing. Now, if there is no information for a particular trait or gene combo, scientists can do what's called knockout and or delete a gene to see if it affects the protein expression. So you can generate organisms by removing particular genes to see if that has an effect on it. You tried using Genius. That booklet was not helpful. Ah, gosh, that was fun. It's called Genius. It's pretty cool. So what happens is if you knock out or remove a particular gene, you can detect whether or not that gene is expressing the protein that you're interested in. So does the trait show up or not when the gene is deleted or silenced? If that trait does not show up, they know they have found the right gene. Oh, goodness. So then we have something, now one technology that I believe Monsanto developed was called seed chipping. This allows scientists to take a small little slice of a seed to perform genetic analysis on it while there's enough left for that seed to remain intact to use for planting. So let's say you've knocked out a gene. in a particular organism. You can take that seed, make a slice, grow that organism, do analysis on the genetic code while the organism's growing in the soil, and determine, all right, did we successfully knock out the gene? And is it showing up in the plant? So it kind of speeds up the process a bit better. This also helps aid in generating that genetic database to help cross-reference traits and genes to allow ease in finding which trait goes with which gene. Anyway, I believe prevention is better than cure. GMO is a temporary solution. Well, as I mentioned before, Janik, is that since we have climate change is a real thing and our planet's getting hotter, we're having more droughts and floods, we need sturdier plants to withstand floods, and we need plants that can withstand droughts. That is an immediate need. It's an immediate need. It's not going away. Or it's getting worse. It's getting worse. And so until we can reverse, which is probably going to take 50, 60, 70 years to reverse the damage that's been done to our planet, if that's even possible, GMO is a real issue that climate change is a real issue, and it's going to affect our food. So that's not going to go away. And we have to address these things as they come. So hopefully it's a temporary solution, but the thing is, it's not going away. So, all right. So this little bit, oh wait, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to do this. All right, I'm gonna shrink myself a bit. All right, so this is the last little bit of section on how it works. Mr. Green Jeans made a captain turn into a kangaroo. Oh my gosh, that's an old show. All right, so here we go with this last two little sections here, and I'm going to go through these. So we insert the desired trait into a genome. Remember, I talked about bacterial plasmids. And then we have two options here. We can use a gene gun, pew, pew, or we can use bacteria to enter into seeds and affect those particular organisms that way. And then growing the GMO is important, so we have to have controlled growth chambers to kind of help these plants survive and through all of that, to make sure they sustain and see what the best optimal situation is for these plants to grow. So let's talk a little bit about these particular processes. What does it mean? What does it do? Eliminate the demand? Is that what Janek's saying? Well, then that means we have to kill people if we eliminate the demand. And I don't think that's really a good idea. Gene guns, yes! All right, I'll talk to you about what they are. So plants are not so easily genetically modified. They do have cell walls, and they have rigidity that has to be overcome. So a lot of companies will take a combination. They'll take the genetically modified bacteria with using that DNA. So they'll use that DNA. Then they attach it to nanoparticles. And then they have a sci-fi sounding gene gun. And these seeds are blasted with .22 caliber charges, forcing the gene into the plants. So it's a way to inject DNA plasmids into plants through that process. Now, there are a few companies that don't really do this anymore. They instead use modified bacteria that act a bit like a Trojan horse to invade cells, and then with the new gene, allowing it to enter into the plant's genetic code. So you don't have all this gene gun pew, pew, pew blasting with the particles that are coded in DNA. You have a naturally occurring bacteria that works like a Trojan horse to inject the particular information that you want into a plant. So let's talk about once the genome has been altered. What did they do at that point? Researchers double-checked that only the gene of interest has been changed, and correctly at that. So they have to make sure that the gene has been changed within the organism, and then that it's expressing correctly, and that it's safe. And so once that passes all the inspection, the plants are studied under strict conditions to determine how well they reproduce and survive. There's even a technology that tracks optimal seeding and growth conditions in order to generate the best possible outcome. So this also gives further insight, and they give these instructions to farmers in how to plant these seeds and upkeep to give the highest chance for the best yield for the particular plants. Okay, pollinators. I mentioned before that if we're able to make herbicide or actually insect-resistant plants, it can, and herbicide-resistant plants to a degree, to where you can target particular insects without affecting pollinators. So if you make insect-resistant plants, you have less pesticides that you have to use that would not target the insects that are beneficial. Agrobacteria have been modifying the genes of plants long before apes were around, let alone humans. Yeah, so we have bacteria that's been modifying plants for a long time. Companies just use that aspect of it in order to modify plants for the traits that we find beneficial. Larger plants, better plants, plants that are resistant to drought, plants that get larger on a less amount of space, plants that are resistant to certain herbicides. So all of these things are actually quite useful. They conserve water, as I mentioned before. Plants, genetically engineering plants to uptake nitrogen more readily so it doesn't pollute areas. So all of these things are benefits to GMO that actually help our environment. Yes, Monsanto does have all sorts of companies that make all sorts of products. So let's talk now about the issues. If I can get my slide to go over. There it is. Now let's talk about the issues. What are the issues? Hopefully somebody will actually appreciate this gift. You seem like someone who wants to do good in this world. Please watch Cowspiracy on Netflix. So I tend to mostly just read actual scientific papers and base what I do on that. Not so much on any kind of movies on Netflix. But I certainly appreciate that that's a thing that people do. But I'm a scientist, and so I'm always going to default to what the research says. So, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Very, very cheeseball 70s movie, but I couldn't help but throw this out here. What if we genetically modify killer tomatoes? I think that'd be kind of funny. So to reiterate, farm animals are not genetically modified organisms, but they do eat genetically modified plants. I never played that game, but I know it's a movie. Hello, Hannah. So there are some concerns in regards to potential biodiversity breach. They worry about these genetically modified plants getting out into the wild. And then we have no real human harm found. Okay, it's a documentary filled with scientists who have more experience than me. No offense. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Documentaries are great and they are filled with scientists, but I actually read the scientist's paper. That's where I go. So that says a lot about you as a scientist, because I don't watch documentaries and I actually read the papers that they publish instead of watching documentaries. That should say a lot about me as a scientist. It says I'm a scientist who reads actual papers, the original research, and sees what it says. I don't just base my thoughts on a movie, a documentarian made, or a filmmaker made in regards to a documentary. So yes, that should say a lot about me as a scientist, because I actually read the papers that they publish. And I encourage everybody to do that, not just take what's given to you on Netflix. Okay, so back to it. You went to uni for 5 years and science can be bought. Well, I have 4 degrees and I went to uni a lot longer than you, sir. Or is this really a contest? And I'm a published scientist. So, okay. Anyway, I'm going to get back on topic now because I don't feel like arguing with people on the internet about my abilities in science and reading it. All right, so let's talk about the potential issues. Well, thank you, Dave. I rock, I don't play. Well, you know, I do like playing. Playing's fun. So, but at the same time, you know, I know what I do. So that's all right. So let's talk about the concerns. Fox News, natural news. Yes, yes. Boy, we know about that. And documentaries do have a slant. They do have a slant. That's why I read the actual papers. That's important. You need to know what the actual science is. All right. There is some concern that modifying plants causes potential health issues for individuals. These issues primarily focus on allergens and gene transfer from GM foods to the body, for example, gut bacteria. So some concern arises in regard to antibiotic resistance and gene transfer. Now, the probability of gene transfer from foods to human cells is exceedingly low. GMOs that do not have gene transfer associated with antibiotic resistance are encouraged. Now, most countries have stringent guidelines, as people in the talk I mentioned before, Germany, and investigations associated with GMOs. Now, the regulatory bodies look at how the organism is affected, if it changes the overall organism to an unrecognizable state, if there are any toxic aspects because of the gene modification, as well as any other potential health issues that can arise. Now, not all countries have this strict regulation in GMOs, but the World Health Order does work in coordination with all of these different countries to help minimize any type of issues associated with GMOs. Don't mind the trolls. I rule. Well, thank you. You're qualified to determine that. I do back up what I say with evidence and data. And so I'm about to show you a graph from an analysis of GMO studies that was published in 2014. So I'll talk about that in a second. Now, the last issue that is associated with GMOs that is some concern is outcrossing to plants in the wild. Essentially, GMO plants that breed with wild plants. And so that can affect gene expression, and we could see issues associated with that. Now, also, there could be conventional seeds get mixed with GMO seeds. Now, this may have an indirect effect on food safety and security in that these are kind of what we feed animals. So things that were necessarily meant for human consumption sometimes get translated over to animal consumption. Yes, it's called fact checking. That's the way I learned things. Read the scientist papers. So, in 2014, an analysis of GMO studies was published. The authors combed through 10 years of GMO research and found that GMO foods did not pose any real risk on humans in the 10 years worth of studies that have been formed on them. So, I'm going to show you this big old giant graph of all the papers that they looked at. So the title of this particular, now this is a review paper, but review papers are quite useful. Here, I'll talk a minute about a review paper. Let me go back because I've talked about the differences between research papers and review papers. Review papers are quite useful, especially if you're using it for like a type of analysis for particular trends. And so this particular review paper went over 10 years worth of research covering the gambit. And you can read the paper. It's not behind a paywall. And I have that link and you can look it up right now. It's called An Overview of the Last 10 Years of Genetically Engineered Crop Safety Research. So somebody's done all the footwork for you, looked at all of these papers and combed them together. They even broke it down into different types of research. So let's look at all of the different types of research that they looked at. All right, so from 2002 to 2011, or 12 even, they looked at biodiversity, wild relatives, coexistence, soil, substantial equivalence, non-targeted assessment, food and feed consumption, as well as traceability. So you can look at, they looked at all of these different aspects of crops. So what that means essentially is they looked at the food and feed. They looked at the environmental impact. They looked at how this affects humans as far as health. And they looked to make certain it could be traceable. So all of these different papers, and again, if you don't want to wait for my website to post this, you can Google an overview of the last 10 years of genetically engineered crop safety. It's a comprehensive, almost, well, it's quite a hefty read, but they go through all of these different things and they talk about what they found. You've read this study, Dave. Is it David? David? Cool. That is awesome that you have read that study. It's pretty cool. What did you think about it, David? It's pretty big. It's a big, big study. The last sentence in there, and what they did, they found that there was no substantial harm to people that they could find over the course of the 10 years worth of studies that they had looked into. Don't dogs just make dogs? Google Scholar is great as long as one is scientifically literate. Yes, for anyone who isn't, it might as well be Mandarin. See, that's why I want to help here. I want to help individuals be able to read those papers and pick that apart. That's why I did my talk on scientific method. I tell you how to read a paper there. If you listen to my podcast, I think the second or third episode of my podcast, I teach you how to read a scientific paper. I also talk a bit about the difference between papers on my peer review video. So those can all help you out. So the last sentence in that particular study says, we believe that genetic engineering and GE crops should be considered important options in the efforts toward sustainable agricultural production. Our collection of scientific records is available to researchers, communicators, and teachers at all levels to help create an informed and balanced public perception on the hot issue of genetic engineering use in agriculture. It does look like word salad sometimes if you try to read a paper. I'm doing great work. Yay! I'm so glad you think so. So public perception of GMOs is a substantial concern as people push against what they think is unnatural. But what people need to understand at this point is that what we are doing to the environment and have been doing to the environment was never natural and hasn't been for thousands of years. With the push in climate change affecting crops globally, GMO has become a necessity. We cannot afford to pick and choose what we consider natural and unnatural in a world where we have contaminated our planet through blatant excess and pollution. If we are to survive, we need to understand our current state of the world, work to better the planet. We have changed our world in many ways, and many of them are not natural. Furthermore, nature wants to kill us. Nature has always wanted to kill us. But the more toxic we create our planet, the more we have to modify the genetic code in order to adapt and survive. This happens with our basic necessities: food, water, conservation, and sustainability. So the thing is if we're going to rapidly change our planet, there's just not enough time for organisms to adapt and evolve on their own. And so in that regard, GMO is going to be a necessity because it's going to get more expensive to feed your family. So that's what we're looking at. And it's not a luxury. I mean, saying I want non-GMO food is going to be a luxury that nobody can afford pretty soon because it's just not going to exist. Because, I mean, we need drought-resistant crops. We need flood-sustaining crops. We need all of these different types of plants that can survive under these harsh conditions now. You thought I would be some pseudoscience busybody mom, but you're glad you're wrong. I'm the best. Well, thank you. I actually rip pseudoscience a new one. I am not about all that. I do not care for the fake science. And if you follow me on Twitter or check out any of my videos, you learn this really quickly. So, oh my goodness. Yeah, we have grafted and hybridized so many crops. So yes. So I've essentially, in this particular talk, this has been a really, really fun talk. Genetically modified organisms. What is it? What is GMO? Why do we do it? How does it work? What are the potential issues? So I've talked a bit on how it works. I've talked about why we do it, largely due to sustainability at this point, and also we got to feed people. Human population is exploding. And the potential issues. Allergens mostly are a concern. I forgot the word. Or basically GMOs mixing with the wild types. We don't really necessarily want that. And some concern with uptake of gene transfer from plants, but that's such a low probability. And R&D is expensive. Yes, it is. And so I'm going to try to go back through and read some of your questions. You tried to once read a paper on quantum fluctuations and it looked like something written in alien language. That's always fun. That is always fun, isn't it? So I'm going to take a moment to show you. These are my sources, and I know you can't read that. But if you go on my website, I've got the FDA, TNF Online, World Health Organization. I've got several papers here on NCBI. Evolution.Berkeley is a great site if you want to learn more about artificial selection. There's an article about GMOs, and then the Harvard website that gets in a bit more information about what Monsanto does. And then here's another information module as well to help you with GMOs. This is on my website. You can look and download my slides. I'll put them up there right after this broadcast. And so I'm going to take a moment to thank my patrons. I'm on Patreon, and if you like what I do, my patrons start at $1 a month. You get access to exclusive content. You also get early access to my audio podcast. I also put videos and little snippets of stuff on things that I'm doing throughout the process of making this show. So I'm going to thank Tony, James, Lauren, Jen, Carl, Melanie, Patrick, Daniel, Paula, Tim, Carrie, Cersei, Keith, Zachary, Tony, Graham, Tristan, Jennifer, Corey, Heavy, and Dragnot. You're not on there. I put you on the lightning one. How did you not translate? Because I brought this over here. So I'm gonna holler out at Dragnot because he's one of my patrons as well, and I have to put him on there. And more recently, an atheist in Iowa. He's one of my patrons as well. I thought I updated that, but I'm giving them a call out anyway. And Dragnot has a YouTube channel. You'll have to go and check out his channel, as well as an atheist in Iowa, or an Iowan atheist. An atheist in Iowa is his Twitter. Iowan atheist is his YouTube. Go check them out. They're pretty cool. I hop on their channels from time to time too, and give it a little chat. So, so please, patreon.com/scientistmel. I also have exclusive artwork just for my patrons from an artist, from a struggling artist, a young artist who wants to be a digital artist. I pay for her work. I actually do give her, because I believe in paying artists for what they do. And if you like what I do, buy me a coffee. $1 or $2 once a month. Get extra treats and stuff. Where can you find me? Everywhere. Just Google Scientist Mel and you will find me. You will find me somewhere. ScientistMel.com. Patreon.com/ScientistMel. You're watching me on Periscope. Guess what? I'm there. Facebookers, you're watching me there. YouTube. Scientist Mel. Godless Iowan. The Godless Iowan. That's it. The Godless Iowan. He's an atheist in Iowa on Twitter. Godless Iowan channel. Check out his stuff. Hey, Comic Girl, thank you so much. Oh, good. Yay, I'm so glad you guys are learning stuff. You guys are nice. So here we've got, it's been the genetically modified organism episode of the science of... Troll of the Century, Jonathan Tuttle. There are GMOs that have higher contents of certain elements like calcium. Yeah, so if we have an expression of a certain amount of particular higher amount of certain elements, or a higher amount of a certain expression of a protein. That stuff's kind of important, and we kind of need to know if there's any alternative to alternative effects that can come from that. Sometimes I have a word in my mind moves faster than my mouth, and sometimes it's like, stop brain, I have to say words now. And so sometimes when I'm pausing, I'm formulating the sentences that go in my head. Did I like Interstellar? No. You got this live at 4 a.m. Well, thank you, Joe, for watching. This coffee is mine, though. Oh my goodness. I did not like Interstellar. I didn't like it. It drove me nuts. I just was like, man, no. Interstellar was not something I enjoyed. Don't hide Wonder Woman. Yeah, I got Wonder Woman right there. I also have Wonder Woman back here, too. I have 2 different Wonder Womans. I got, like, this action figure here. Woohoo! Wonder Woman! And then I've got my Donner Tonner doll. Not my Donner doll. My Tonner doll is back there. There's my Wonder Woman. She gonna get you. She gonna get you and pow you with science and reasoning with her science bracelets. That's like it's like me watching. Mel is like me watching any film depicting war. GMOs do help the world. I didn't like Interstellar. I just was so bored with it. I was utterly bored with Interstellar. And I thought these are the worst scientists ever. That's all I could think of. Like, the very beginning, I thought no scientist would ever do this. Why would they do this? They would spend all this money on this. Why would they do this? This doesn't make sense. One of the mammal cell cultures I worked with were modified to have more metal transport proteins. We rigged them to overexpress so we could better study the effect of heavy metals on kidney cells. Ooh, that's cool. You like that movie. That's okay if you like that movie. You haven't watched Interstellar. Linda Carter was the best Wonder Woman. I really liked her. Hey, Miss D. Hello, everyone. Neil deGrasse Tyson does have a lot of fun with movies, though. Lost in Space. Oh, gosh, man. Don't get me started on Lost in Space, guys. Oh, that was painful. It got a bit better towards the end, I think. I did sit through big portions of it, but I thought, man, these scientists are just entirely reckless and just, this is how you don't science. They broke a lot of science rules. You know, you're just like, this is like basic stuff. It was really hard. GMOs do help. They primarily help. They don't hurt. So, you know, like people think they do. They help. Contagion. I'll have to watch that. Danger Will Robinson. Oh my goodness. You have a breakdown of Interstellar that is pretty deep philosophically, you think? Or I'll pop over to Solo so you don't see the animated GMOs popping around everywhere. I liked Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I loved that film. My butt was in that seat 5 times in the theater. Bionic Woman, maybe. Maybe do an episode on why the movie Contagion won several science awards for its accuracy. I'll have to watch it. Zoology. Yes, you know, it's the study of animals. I like that. I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. So what type of scientist am I? A geneticist, biologist, or do you just generally report on it? Okay, so I've done research in genetics on the Tree of Life project. I've done cancer research in regards to drug delivery and detection. I have a publication that's been accepted by Theranostics for a breast cancer test that I worked on while I was in graduate school. I helped engineer. So that's up. And so I've primarily done work in that. So analytical chemistry in coordination with biochemistry, in coordination with genetics. So it's just kind of run a little bit of the gambit there. Now I work primarily in industry in protein purification, which is kind of cool. So I work with purifying genetically modified yeast in order to extract particular antigens that are used in tests for detections of various diseases for all over the world. So that's pretty cool. But this is what I do to try to boost scientific literacy, because I used to be a teacher. And so, and I can legally teach 3 subjects right now: biology, chemistry, and physical science, high school level. That's pretty cool. Basically, antigenic shift and drift. Okay. Let's see. I need to watch Contagion. I don't think I've ever seen it. You're thinking about studying that. What are my thoughts? I think zoology is a lot of fun. It depends on what aspect you want to do, because zoology is a blanket term. So if you're wanting to zero in on a particular aspect, are you wanting to do veterinary school? Are you wanting to do behavior research? Are you wanting to do genetics research? You wanting to do, you could even get into archaeology in regards to zoology and see how organisms have evolved. So evolutionary biology. So there's a lot of different stuff you can do with zoology. Contagion is, and if you're interested, P.Z. Myers worked primarily, he's in genetics, but he started in zoology. You should check out his stuff. He's a professor now, and he works in science education primarily, but he started in zoology and branched off into genetics. So there's a lot of stuff there. I will check out Contagion. I like Altered Carbon. I liked it a lot better than Lost in Space. Oh, goodness. Okay, I won't understand the science behind it until the end, which you won't spoil, but it involves horrible people morally and hygienically. Oh, wow. I'm going for my biochem degree next fall. Any advice? Okay, Luke. I would say, if you're going for biochemistry, and that's when you're starting school, you want to spread out the easy classes. Do not take all of the easy classes the first 2 years. That's a very bad idea. You don't want to take organic chemistry at the same time as calculus or physics or genetics or any of the, you don't want to take the harder classes all grouped on each other. Organic chemistry is going to take a lot of your time. Biochemistry is going to take a lot of your time. Do not take any science classes over the summer. That is a very bad idea, and you're not going to have enough time to absorb the knowledge you need for the next round of classes for the fall. Do not do it. I used to teach over the summer at university when I was a TA, and there would be students taking the general chemistry lab over the summer, and they're just crying. I'm going, I don't know why you would take a science class over the summer. I'm trying to finish quickly. No, bad idea. That's going to mess you up for the rest of your chemistry classes if you do not have a fundamental understanding of general chemistry. It's going to mess you up, and you don't want to take hard classes altogether. Space it out if you can and pepper it with the easier classes for you. I say easier, what I mean is less demanding. So watch out. Can science change people's DNA? I read where they have done reverse aging in mice in human trials. I'll volunteer. I haven't read the reverse aging just yet, but it probably has something to do with telomerase, and telomerase. I talk a bit about that in Paulogia's video that I did recently. So if you haven't gone over to Paulogia's video, Paulogia, check out his channel. I talk a bit about telomerase and how that showed how that affects telomere expression and how that's linked to aging. You have a zoology textbook that you're reading through. Wow, that's cool. You're welcome, Miss D. Lost in Space is the bomb. It's not for me because I know everything they do wrong scientifically, but that's entirely my fault. I get that. You sign your paperwork for undergrad research in tissue culturing. Oh, yay, collaborator from a well-known organization. I'll check my messages. Thank you, Dragnaut. You can base a lot of stuff on zoology. Oh, goodness. Yeah, the worst flu you ever had was after you were vaccinated. Yeah, that's the thing about the flu virus. When they're making the vaccines, they have to guess which one is going to be predominant for that particular season, and sometimes it's not 100%. You're doing pre-algebra now. I was a homeschooled, so I never learned any algebra. Well, to be fair, I used to teach at a church homeschool for a long time, and one of my students managed to get a full ride scholarship at university. But here's the thing, he graduated high school early. He got his master's in business by the time he was 21. He finished his first degree when he was about 19. And then since he couldn't get a job, nobody would hire him because he couldn't legally drink. And a lot of business stuff involves drinking sometimes. He went back to grad school and got his master's in business. I believe he had an undergrad in math and a master's in business. Homeschooling, you know, it depends on who your teachers are in your motivation. I had physics and calc in the same semester. Didn't start the physics until I was 2/3 of the way through the calc class. Yes. Oh, goodness. Yes, it's tough. You got to be careful. You fight the stranger yet? I don't know what you mean. Okay. I was going to stream, but I didn't want to interrupt Holy's live. Oh, goodness. Well, I won't keep you guys much longer. We've been on for over an hour. My goodness. Evidently, though, they are getting closer to a universal flu vaccine, are they? I haven't read that. I have done an episode on vaccines and the different types, Luke Gray. You can either comb through my Periscope and look through. It's a bit further back. Or you can hop on my YouTube channel, and that might be more user-friendly. I'm not certain which one you prefer. But I have done an episode on vaccines. And if you don't like live streams so much, that's okay. I've already posted 2 episodes of what I call Scientist Mel Shorts, where they're shortened versions of all of the information I present on this show. So if you don't want to have to sit through an hour-long chat of me interacting with people and talking to them, or even longer sometimes, you don't have to. I'm making shorter versions for bite-sized science and little bits for you to take and enjoy. Sometimes that's what people use. We can stream after this. Well, I'm almost done. Could you tweet links to other videos of you talking on other channels? Yes, I have. I've put every time I'm appearing on channel. Also, I was on Sci Strike's movie night for a little bit last night. And so I can find that. I do show up. Sometimes I show up sporadically on other channels, and it's not always. But the ones I tend to be on sometimes are the Great Debate Community. I've been on Paula Gia's channel. Sometimes I'm on Jackson Wheat's. I tend to be on Dragnot's channel. I've been on that channel before. I've been on Mind the Gap. I'm going to be on the Non Sequitur show this Sunday. And I've shown up on Sci Strike's channel. Talking about climate change every Sunday for almost like a month now, a month and a half. Goodness. Algebra, yeah, algebra it can be difficult for some people. Thank you, Dave. I'm glad you enjoyed this. What is my YouTube channel? Scientist Mel. I make it easy. Scientist Mel. Everything is Scientist Mel. Just Google that, and or if you don't want to Google, go to my website, scientistmel.com. Click on Engage, and it shows where all you can find me on social media, including my YouTube channel. Hugs to you too. That was fun last night. Mel's on all the best channels. I try to be. You slept through movie night. I'm sorry. I've also been on the Godless Iowans channel, Mrs. Snarky's channel. I've been on Johnny Drive-By's channel. I've been on a lot of different channels. And it's a lot of fun. I like talking science with people. Yay, cooking on Sunday. Yes, talking about food science on the Non Sequitur show. One last question. Does the creationist dogma seem to be dying out? I'm not entirely certain because I don't really go into that realm so much. I mostly focus. See, my brain moves faster than my mouth. Oh, I mostly focus on the science of things and the evidence. I wasn't on the movie night very long because I get up about 6 or 7 in the morning just to prepare these shows. So that's why I say, if you like what I do, please do consider that I do a lot of this stuff myself. And, that's why Patreon is quite helpful for me because it helps me keep the lights on. So if you can toss $1 my way. I'm trying to get monetization on YouTube, but that's a bit harder. That requires like 4,000 hours of viewing. I am about a third of the way there, or a fourth of the way there. I'm about a fourth of the way there. So I do teach. Yes, so until then, but I also have a PayPal, so if you just want to drop me a little funds one time, that's cool too. Message me. My PayPal is listed on my YouTube channel as well. If you want to I'll just send her $5. You can do it that way too. Oh goodness, the first movie night. Oh my goodness. No, BitChute. That's a thing? Can I do BitChute? I have to write this down now. See, you guys got to understand I'm new to some of this. BitChute. I'm going to write this down. BitChute. And if you guys have ideas to help me generate. Also, I have gear now. I have a shop where you can buy t-shirts and stuff associated with the artwork from the young artist who contributes on my Patreon. I do. I stream on YouTube. I stream on Periscope. I stream on Facebook Live. Oh, thank you. Yes, there's my channel on Periscope. Holbo is posting it. My YouTube channel. But yeah, I stream everywhere. And so if you have a place, and also I'm available for Skyping into classrooms and streaming into other venues. And I'm looking at starting to travel and do talks in person at pubs, restaurants, bars, venues. I can cater my talk to whatever your audience is. That's kind of what I do. So if you want me to come to your town, message me. We can sort something out, and then I can stream live for everybody else who can't come, and I can do a live talk, and we can sit and talk science and do all kinds of cool stuff, and I'll have different options for you to pick for me to talk. I'll have like 10 different topics, and you pick which one you want me to talk about, and then I show up and I talk about it. Isn't science and technology grand? It's all grand, isn't it? All right. Well, I guess I'm going to hop off of here because I think other people want to stream and stuff and they're watching this. Science is everywhere, man. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Oh, no. Hide the children. Schools. I can do schools, too. But see, that's the thing. I'm going to, and I'm still getting together my Spirited Science show. And so my Spirited Science show is going to be in little pubs or bars, and we will all share the same type of beverage with a recipe for that beverage as we talk about a particular science topic or scientist. Well, thank you, Bo. Hello, 8-Bit. Yes, RAR. Knocking out the ignorance and replacing it with the knowledge, right? That's what we try to do on this show. Doesn't always work, but we try. Thank you for the chat. I'm so glad you guys had a good time. And all of my shows are organized on YouTube by playlists. So do not fear. You can look for the shows on my playlist there, and that's helpful. Microbreweries, yes. I'm going to contact local places within my area to where I can stream from there. And I want, on those nights that I do that, I want to generate money for a particular organization, whether it be a charity or a research organization. So that'll be cool. Yay for Saturday morning science! I try to make it fun. I hope you guys had a great time. I like sharing science with you guys. It's a lot of fun. And I feel it warms the heart, you know. It warms the heart of it, a little bit. We get to learn stuff together. And I get to learn stuff too, because sometimes this isn't my field of stuff. So, yay! Scientists smell wine streams. Oh my goodness, the science of wine. Let's do a 5-hour episode and see how it progresses. What do you say? Will you join me? Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be something? The science of wine. In the 3rd hour. And we find scientist Mel is stumbling over her words, and she's got profound, deep thought at this moment. It's Saturday afternoon where you are. Fantastic. Well, thank you for being here, guys. If you just hopped on, if you're not, my Periscopes stay up forever, as do my videos on YouTube and Facebook. You can always watch them. And if you don't like the live stream type of format, that's okay. I have condensed versions of my shows that I'm putting on called Scientist Mel Shorts. You can check those out on YouTube under that playlist, Scientist Mel Shorts. So yes, so have a fantastic day. Yes, RC. I'd have to try all the wines. I am so glad you're here, and I'm so glad I get to teach you. This is fun for me, and we get to talk about science. Yay! And so Sunday, tomorrow, check out the Non Sequitur show. I will be on there that evening. But before that, I will be on SciStrike's channel talking about climate science. I believe that's our last episode on that. But they're awesome. So be sure you go check out their climate science series. It's fantastic. So squishy science hugs, and I will see you guys really soon. Yay! Happy Saturday or Sunday if that's where you are now. Bye.